Redditors who objected at a wedding. What was the reason? How did it go after? Like most folks, I haven't objected at a wedding and would die of social anxiety if I did. But I met a guy who tried. Meet Dave. Dave's an older guy, likes to hang out with the young and hip crowd, even manages a few hookups with girls half his age. Dave dates a younger gal for a while, really likes her, but she moves on and several years down the line, is about to get married. Dave and said gal meet up for a drink, and somehow, Dave gets the impression she still loves him and wants him to make a grand gesture to prove his love. Due to a destination wedding several weeks later, Dave trailers his horse down to the wedding, with the idea that he'll walk the horse down the aisle and shout "I object" and carry the girl away. Girl in question gets wind of Dave's plan, and calls the police. As Dave pulls up at the wedding and starts to get the horse out, police stop him and politely ask him to leave. Dave still really wants to prove his love, so being Dave, he starts throwing haymakers and yelling for love for the girl. All of this is happening like a movie scene in sight of the outdoor wedding. Dave is hauled away, and the wedding goes in a much more surreal tone. Kids, don't be Dave. TLDR. Guy tries to object at a wedding, is instead hauled away by police and ends up with aggravated assault on a police officer charge. Edit. Since people really want to know what happened to the horse, he was also arrested for criminal negligence. Thought about objecting during my mom's wedding to my stepdad. Was too big of a pussy. Then spent the next 2 years watching him drunkenly beat her from room to room. I should have said something. I didn't object, but we were worried my cousin would, so we left that part out of the ceremony. Not that he had any founded fears. We just didn't want him making an ass of himself in public. Been married 20 plus years now, and my cousin can still be an ass, so he can suck it. Didn't even get that far. We had so much drama planning our wedding we scrapped it and eloped. My mother hated my fiance. My father-in-law hated me. Nobody could agree on anything, so we said screw it and moved 1,200 miles away. We're still together after 30 years. Both of our parents are now divorced. Mic drop. Love the drama involved with this question. Going to search for a few good posts from older threads to get the conversation going. Be right back. You Canisius said this. More than I tried objecting once. I still had to marry her. You Snarlers said this. More than when I was about 15 I was at my uncle's wedding, and they asked if anyone objected. My dad slipped ice down the back of my shirt. I proceeded to jump up startled and everyone turned to me in shock. I sit back down without saying a word and my dad laughed like a hyena. Everyone was very confused. Deleted. Said this. More than my uncle yelled out shut the duck up Bobby. Then everybody laughed and my cousin sat down. Usutology said this. More than lot of laughs. My friend's older brother is a lawyer. He was marrying a lawyer. Most of their friends are lawyers. The officiant was a judge who was a friend of theirs. More than he and his fiancée thought it would be funny to plant someone in the audience. They got a friend to yell I object, to which the judge yelled overruled. It seemed to have gone over well for most, but I don't think some of their family members got it. UCDC said this. More than my friend was getting married. I was best man. The words are spoken. Does anyone have good cause for why these two should not be wed? More than out of the crowd I hear, in a very southern accent, the words I love her. More than everyone looked back. It was a drunk guest who thought it would be a funny joke. He was just laughing and laughing. He was escorted off the premises. Aleric said this. More than my own. I suppose I could say. She and I had been dating since we were 13. More than I had gone overseas as a military contractor. And when I returned I asked her to marry me. More than we spent a year planning everything. More than on the day of the wedding when asked if anyone objected a guy stood up. My would-be wife told him to sit back down and he proclaimed loud enough for everyone to hear that he had been with her the entire time I was away and including the time we were planning the wedding. More than she then broke down and confessed that the only reason she was marrying me was that he had gotten her pregnant and he was a bum, whereas I at least had a job. More than left her. Met a nice girl through work and am now happily married. I see her around sometimes. Miserable as hell with him following behind her like a whipped puppy. I objected before the wedding. The best man and I Bridesmaid knew the bride was cheating on our friend. Groom. We tried to talk him out of the wedding beforehand, but they went through with it. I said I couldn't be in the wedding because I couldn't stand there and act like it was right. The groom woke up late 1 month after the wedding, 1 month to the date exactly, and found the texts of her cheating. They divorced right after that. My cousin thought about objecting at his mom and stepdad's wedding. He pussied out bigly. Spent the next couple of years drunkenly watching his stepdad beat her. I was in love with the bride. We were sort of meant for each other, but she wouldn't admit it to herself. She decided to marry some short duckwood instead. Wedding comes along, and my friend told me to wait until the does anybody object part. But the priest skipped right over it, but then a dragon ate the groom. So it all worked out. Do people really do this? I thought this was just something that happened in TV shows. Not really at the wedding because they just did a courthouse marriage, but it might apply for my cousin and what will eventually be her ex-husband. His entire family and all of his friends objected to them marrying. Our entire family and all of her friends objected to them marrying. A year into the marriage, which happened after only 4 months of dating, everyone on both sides learned he'd been beating her and her children. I feel bad for her. I fucking live for these wedding drama threads. While I've never objected at a wedding, I've been specifically singled out and told to shush at no less than 3 separate weddings, despite the fact that I had zero intentions of saying anything at any of them. Heard a guy objected at my cousin's wedding and got punched out by the bridegroom's father before he even started his speech. The guy literally got dragged out as he saw the bride and groom kiss. Edit. Word. Thought me and my sister would make a better couple than her and her then fiance. Turns out everyone thought I was joking and just laughed. No one objected at my wedding, but the best man told he was in love with me 7 weeks before the wedding. That seems like an objection to me. He dipped out of his duties and the wedding. One of my friends had her father object at a wedding on account of the groom being a lizard. The groom's fingertips are strangely large, so the father determined it was because he is a lizard. Was all taken in good spirits as the father is just a natural joker and everyone knew he was joking. 2 of my friends got married for fun. They are 2 girls. One of their boyfriends officiated. Yep. They went through the hassle of getting legally married just for the story. I objected at the wedding and they ignored me. Actually, pretty much everyone in attendance tried to object. They moved forwards with it. I'm still friends with bride number 1. She didn't take offense to the objection. In fact, she liked it because she likes drama and attention. Weirdest day of my life. So, it was an accident. But, when I was 6 years old, my mother remarried. My older sister and I were up at the front with them. Flower girl and ring bearer or some other thing like that. I don't really remember. Before the ceremony, the judge explained that when he asked a certain question, he would look at me and I should say less than sister more than, and I do. What that response was intended for I don't recall, as it was decades ago, but I remember what I actually replied to. Much laughter ensued. I married a woman who is not Mormon, but belongs to a church that sometimes gets confused with the Mormons. They're called Community of Christ, formerly known as RLDS, a spin-off that broke away from the Mormons at the very beginning, before Brigham Young went to Utah. In the 174 years since then they've moved very liberal, pretty much the opposite of the Mormons in every way that counts. Even so, a whole lot of my friends tried to talk me away from her once we started dating. I have several friends who are LGBT, who were worried that she would be anti-gay just like the regular Mormons. They didn't believe me at first when I told them that Community of Christ RLDS practices marriage equality, and therefore they had no reason to worry. Even my own mother was worried that she wouldn't be invited to the wedding. She expected a temple wedding like the Mormons practice, where only practicing Mormons would be invited. That's not a practice that Cox shares. Again, no reason to worry. We got married in my parents' yard that was on a river. When we got to this part of the ceremony all was quiet, but a very loud motorcycle drove down the road on the opposite side of the river and revved the engine even louder. Everyone burst out laughing. Still got married. Why would people wait until the wedding to do this? I was at a convention once where a Star Wars wedding was occurring and the groom was dressed as Boba Fett. When a rejection came out of the crowd that was gathered, everyone was surprised to see it was Jeremy Bullock in his Boba Fett gear. Good times. Not me but my cousin, that no one likes, at another cousin's wedding. Drunk AF, confessed love, started shouting abuse when everyone started laughing. Got punched in the face by one of the groomsmen and had to be driven home by his dad. We're Canadian. Somewhat in reverse, my grandmother-in-law to be texted me a few hours before the ceremony, "We love you but in this family we do not do divorce, so if you're not ready you can still back out now," or something to that effect. Mind you, I was about to marry her grandson, in the hospital, in between chemo treatments, during his second battle with leukemia. Duck you grandma, and duck cancer. My dad and I took my older brother outside on the day of his wedding and told him he could leave. I offered to give him my car keys and the cash I had on me, about $2,000. Told him we'd go in and explain to everyone. He told us he had to go through with it. He's cheated a few times. Got caught once having an actual girlfriend on the side. He almost got divorced because of it. He's miserable but he's still married with 2 ducked up kids. He knows they're ducked up. He confided to me, while wasted, that he wished he'd listened to us 20 years ago. I got uninvited to a wedding last year because I was planning on objecting. The now wife of my friend found out. She and I are constantly at war. As a 7th grader, I objected at my cousin's wedding simply because I felt like being an attention whoring smartass. They ended up divorcing less than 2 years later. She cleaned out my poor cousin in the divorce, married another dude with the same name and did the same to him a few years later. She lives on thousands of dollars of child support a month. To this day I believe that woman knew exactly what she was doing. Second hand since I was born yet. Apparently my great grandma once yelled, "Who hired this man? He doesn't know it." Then the room laughed. No one objects. The "if there's any reason" line means if there's any legal reason why. For example, they're related, and almost all the time, those things are sorted out weeks before the actual date of the wedding. At my brother's wedding, his miniature wiener dogs were the ring bearers. Freaking adorable. At the exact moment the officiant asked if anyone objected, our little cousin spotted the dogs. Sippies. They screamed and started running up to the stage. Their horrified mother caught them and took them away. But everyone had a good chuckle. The kids were 3 and 4, so too young to know better. My friend's dad got married when my friend was about 30. During the part where someone can object we heard a whistle. We all turned our heads to look and a guy in a referee outfit ran up to the front. He whistled again and made some ref arm motions, then said, "This is a reminder that Bob gets to watch every Penn State football game every Saturday." We all laughed. I was married on a beach and was walking down the pier with my dad towards my soon-to-be husband. We were almost to the beach and my dad stops and says, "Turn around. We can turn around right here. You don't need to marry him." I let go of his arm and kept walking towards my groom. That was 5 years ago and I am still happily married. My dad and I don't talk as much. Objected once. Did not go so well. Lots of people were yelling, "Who the duck is this guy and how did he get in here?" Someone should have objected at Ross' wedding when he said Rachel TBH. My mom and stepdad got married March last year. We invited a lot of friends and one of them was this lady he worked with. When the priest asked if anyone objected, lady stood up and told her story about how she loved my stepdad and wanted to be with him, and it was so awkwardly silent but my mom was crying. It was just a joke. Priest, stepdad and lady were in on it. And I got it all on video. Mom was crying and pushed him for a second, of course. I was honestly about to throw some hands. Edit. No hard feelings guys. We're all good lol. It was messed up at the time but we had so many good laughs afterwards. Should have known too. The lady wants to be an actor. Edit 2. Made it sound like she was absolutely in distress. She was definitely taking it like a champ. She started laughing afterwards and just pushed him aside like US. Don't worry haha. My stepdad is a good man. Just a total jokester. She knew that going into the relationship. Good story to tell in the future. My mother-in-law divorced her husband of 30 years so she could get married someone else. Unfortunately, she kept it all secret until after they'd eloped to the courthouse, so we didn't get the opportunity. Her new husband is a child sex offender. Seriously, had we known, we would have objected, given her an ultimatum, him or us. Somewhere in her messed up head, she convinced herself that we would accept her new life and everyone would be one big happy family. I don't care if you're family, you and your creepy pedophile husband can stay away from my children forever. I had a plan to object at a friend's wedding. I would show up right before they said I do. The groom would say I thought I killed you and we would tussle. I would be thrown over a balcony. I would also be wearing an eye patch throughout the ordeal. This idea was shockingly vetoed. Let's just say that you should never invite Phoenix Wright to a wedding. Relevant enough. Apparently there are people on Craigslist who can pay to go to other people's weddings and object. The bride was an avid equestrian and rode her horse down the aisle, where a groomsman helped her down and led the horse aside. When the officiant asked if there were any objections, the horse whinnied nay, a good laugh, and they've lived happily ever after. I had proposed 6 months prior to the wedding to a stunning blonde bombshell of a babe. We had been dating for a few months, but I just said, screw it. I'm going to marry this woman and be with her until one of us dies. We found a good venue, put a deposit down it, and she bought a wedding dress. We did everything we were supposed to and the big day finally came. At the altar with her hands in mine, the minister asked for any objections. I was just thinking about the fun we would have later in the back of the limo. Suddenly a man stood up and declared that he loved my bride-to-be, walked up, grabbed her arm, and walked out of the church. The worst part is that she went with it. Never saw them since. If it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? My mother, to garner attention, would do something like that. That's why we got married in another state. If she did object, I'd beat her to within an inch of her life. Then restraining order or not, I'd go all Joe Pesci in Casino on her ass again. Seems none of the gals I dated ever met my mom's standards. Until I didn't care and did what I wanted. First marriage. Got married at 32. Still married 25 years later. I played a part in a Star Wars themed wedding. I was in the audience. I donned my Boba Fett helmet, stood up and yelled I object. She's no good to me wed. The emperor presiding over the ceremony force choked me and I collapsed back into my chair. Stop doing BuzzFeed work. I told my co-worker that the material couldn't take the heat, and really a bolted on bracket would be both more secure as well as offer the ability in the future for disassembly. Long story short, he welded it, ended up putting holes in it, and it broke the first time we installed it. They made me marry her anyway, 30 years later, and I'm glad they did it. I may not have been invited to my friend's wedding many years ago because I may have wanted to object. The bride-to-be and I didn't really get along, but had no real bearing on my reasoning. There was a vibe I was getting from her when they were together. I couldn't put a finger on it. I kept trying to warn him that it was a bad idea, but he thought I was just being an asshole. Turns out, one night at work 5 years down the road, she and his other friend started a nightly ritual of her sucking his D. My friend still tried to make it work, but just when he thought they were going to get past it, she comes home and asks for a divorce. She still married him, but now they are divorcing for the very reason I said it would fail. She said she should have listened to me and others who spoke up before the wedding. Apparently I'm bored now and I want food isn't a valid objection.